5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone to the first ever episode of the MengMengDuck Podcast. My name is Andrew. I'm your host. This is a podcast where I chat with professionals about their career journey and any lessons and learnings they learn along the way. And on the first episode, I'm super excited to announce my guest, Peter Kang, aka Lifestyle Banker. Peter is it depends how you view it, is a former investment banker with a wealth of experience across the tech and entertainment sector. He's a current content creator on TikTok and YouTube and currently works at a social media startup. Peter, glad to have you on.
Yeah, man. Very excited to be on. I'm honored. I'm pumped.
Awesome. So yeah, how you been lately though? How you been just the past few months? I understand obviously just get this out the way. I know you recently returned to the corporate world and now you have a
Yeah. I'm on the up and up, man. I really needed, quarantine in the last two and a half years was very much a transitionary phase for me, where I did a lot of soul searching and a lot of internal growth, I think. But yeah, I did recently get a full-time job again, back in corporate America. I can go so many things that I can go into about that, but TLDR on that, I think I needed some balance. I needed some structure. And to be honest, I needed money because 2.5 years of being a starving entrepreneur type. I had eaten through most of my savings. But I found a role that I think it's well balanced with some of my other creative / entrepreneurial endeavors. I think they'll compound and not. I think they'll actually help each other out. I think there will be synergies more than dis-synergies. So I'm really happy about it. It's fully remote. The team's awesome. So trying to figure out. So I'm in Jersey right now, where I grew up back with my parents. Just needed to kind of get my ducks in a row. But yeah, now I'm kind of ideating okay, where do I want to live? I think I want to move back to LA, but I might stay put for a little bit. Check out New York, rekindle some relationships in New York, and then maybe do some hopping. I have a friend in Texas. I have a friend in the South. Maybe hop there and then maybe move back to LA. But all in all, I'm really rebuilding the Maslow's hierarchy pyramid, brick by brick from the bottom up. So it's great. It's going great, man. Just learning to be more patient with it.
Yeah, I totally understand exactly what you just said there in terms of massive hierarchy of needs. Because obviously I'm doing my own entrepreneurship journey right now, and I'm pretty sure everyone watching this, listening to this, know we were both in investment banking at one point. So at that point, money wasn't an issue. So both of us were just oh yeah, we gotta go search for our purpose in life. What we're passionate about. Yeah. And so we leave that and then we start an entrepreneurship journey, and all of a sudden we're oh crap, now money's an issue. Money's pretty nice. We should find a way to make money again.
Yeah. Money is one thing, but for me, the biggest thing is purpose and identity, and literally the motivation to get up at a certain time, get dressed a certain way, shave in the morning. Those are things that psychologically prepare me to take on the day. But when you leave the corporate setting and when you're in quarantine, I found myself not doing a lot of those things and missing a lot of those things, the day-to-day micro routines, as well as the macro, who the fuck am I? What is my purpose? What is my identity? And those are really key things to navigate. You got to know what direction you're going to do stuff. So when you're multi-interested in things, and then you don't have identity and purpose, then it's it was really overwhelming for me because I tried a bunch of stuff in the name of exploration. I tried drop shipping. I told you I tried software boot camp, Java. I tried, I was consulting for different startups. I was financial analyst consulting, versus strategy consulting. I did work for a startup for a second. I was all over the fucking map, and I learned a lot from that. But it was also because I just didn't have the internal strength to I had my identity was always derivative of a institution that I was like a student at or employed at, which is fine. But then you just got to be self-aware that they have that leverage on you. So it's like when I was outsourcing like the bottom 3 rungs of my Maslow's hierarchy of needs to my corporation, which is fine. But then when you boldly decide to like get the top like triangle self-manifestation and you leave the corporation, I was naive and I thought like all I need to worry about is the top fucking 2 rungs. When it's like, no, like you left, like you gotta rebuild from scratch, like from the bottom.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing as how I analogize that is like, Phoenix rise from the ashes. When the Phoenix burns, like you're not a shiny new sexy Phoenix. Like you're like a ugly, tiny, like fledgling, bird fetus Phoenix. And then you got to learn to like walk and fly again. So I think like what I've been doing for the last year is like learning to like walk and fly again, meaning like rebuild my like self-esteem, self-confidence, self-identities, like literally like my routine of like what do I enjoy doing? Like a lot of who I thought I was built when I was 18 to 22, and like I have so many data inputs from like living life now. It's like it's a lot of work, but it's a privilege, and I'm grateful to like kind of be doing that right now. So that's what I mean by like I'm on the up and on. I'm grateful and I'm excited because the big zoom out picture is like, this is a luxury good. This is a luxury experience. I'm doing this because my parents are relatively good. I'm doing this because like I know that I will be able to eat and feed my future family, even if I like soul search for like 2 years. Like I'm okay foregoing that money or for career growth, so I tend to ramble a lot. I know you know that, but maybe your listeners don't. So but yeah, I totally feel you on that, man. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one of the frames that I kind of come back to a lot.
Do you overall, like, have you been enjoying this process of just like, because I feel like I'm going through the same thing too, and maybe you can resonate with what I'm about to say, of like 18 to 20, 22, like we're in university, our identity was we're in college. So what's our next goal? Get a job, get an internship. Great. Cool. What's the most prestigious job you can get out of college? Consulting or banking? All right. So you and I both picked banking, obviously. We went to banking. You go hang out with friends, you go to clubs and stuff. Like the first question anyone asks you is, so what do you do? Right. And you're like, I'm a banker. Right. And then for me recently, I kind of been struggling with that question of what to say to people. I mean, I just tell them like what I am, but in a way of like, I feel the same thing too. I'm kind of lacking that identity of like, oh, what do you do, Andrew? It's like, I do e-commerce and I make TikTok videos. And sometimes people are interested. They're like, oh, tell me more about it, right? Oh, what's your account stuff?
Sometimes people look at you like,
what does that mean? And then the conversation gets a little awkward, just kind of ends it because maybe just the people we surround ourselves with that a lot of them are just corporate employees. So they don't know what that means. And to be honest, like, I think we're both still kind of trying to discover what exactly that means in a way.
Dude, the world doesn't know what's gonna fucking hit him, dude. It's that's a different topic though. But
but overall, like, I don't know. Some days I hate it, other days like I love it. But overall, like it's been a growing process for me. And if I have to say, I would say I do enjoy this process. Like it was what I wanted. Because in a sense, I hated the sense that I had an identity stuck to me that I'm like, Andrew Meng is the banker, period, end of story. I didn't like that. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling, man. Like when you say like, is it fun? Like, am I enjoying it? Yes, it's type 2 fun, meaning like type 1 fun is like considered like you go to the carnival with your friends or whatever. Type 2 fun is like you look back at the good old days and it sucked, but like you're glad you did it. I think it's like a climbing term. Like type 2 fun, it sucked, but like you grew a lot from it, and it like looking back, you cherish it. It's type 2 fun, it like sucks. Like looking inward at your like own like self-doubt and traumas, like, and working past that stuff sucks, but like it ungates different parts of your life, and it like helps you live life more as yourself, which is fun, which is a lot of fun. Like the fact that I'm doing a podcast right now with a friend that I made through TikTok, mutually in Coachella shirts, is absurd if you asked me 2 years ago. right? But this is fun as hell, right? But it took a lot of work of like, why am I insecure about like putting a camera to my face and just posting a 6-second video, right? Like I had to work for that stuff. But to get back to your other question of like banking and identity, yeah, I think like I did this, so I'm sure like a lot of other people do this. Like in my head, it's easy to like double think, meaning like it's like, oh, like I'm self-confident, like outside of the fact that I'm a banker, like I have like self-esteem and confidence outside of the fact that I'm a banker. But then what happens is like as you go recruit and then go into banking, I started to like not invest in the other buckets in my life, literally in terms of like attention, but like literally in terms of time. So those things start to kind of wither away, which I think like could be the right choice for that time in my life. But what happens is like my social skills get rusty. My like, you know, like my like everything else kind of like gets a little bit eroded and rusty. And then you leave banking and you realize like, oh, like I got my 10,000 hours on Excel and I can monetize that skill. And I can now continue to monetize it through like being a finance guy at any really company. Like most companies will pull my resume if I know how to network, right? Like that's awesome. I sacrificed a lot for 2 years and then I got that, right?
Yeah.
But what did I forego? I like forwent a lot. Like I'm much more socially awkward, for example, than I was in college, right? Like big man on campus vibes, or like, you know, compensating like that's what I was. That's just like one very narrow example in terms of like social skills, but like it's other aspects of the life. And I'm rambling again, but yeah, I relied a lot more than I realized on like, oh, Peter Kang, banker, for identity and for confidence. Like it didn't hit me until I removed that from my LinkedIn. And then like you try swiping, you try to get on Tinder and Bumble without like, I don't know if it like actually data wise, it like changed the number of matches, but it certainly like made me think about it. I'm like, what do I put on here? Because, you know, like Hinge, like I can say like, oh, like investment banker, and like, yeah, I roll, oh, finance, fuck boys, whatever.
Finance bros,
whatever. But there's still like an understanding level of like, this guy's ambitious. This guy has a certain amount of like leverage and money. This guy, you know, if he's like not a douchebag, maybe, you know, he has a lot going for him. But like, can I still demonstrate that to someone on the other side of the table, not just apps, without my like, you know, software like pull of like, hey, here's a sticker, here's a gold sticker that I got from Goldman or Barclays or whatever, that's loaded with all this like nebulous whatever, please project that onto me. And, you know, I think the reason that you and I left, there's a million reasons, but one of the things that like didn't sit well with me, and I think like what you're talking about is like, it feels inauthentic, even though I was dependent on it, even though I was milking it. Like I knew that it was hindering my ability to build that muscle on my own, right? And like, it's easier to like name drop a top university or a bank, but it's so much fucking cooler 5 years from now to be like, yeah, like I was one of the first professional creators on TikTok, and me and Meng are like buddies because we came up and we're figuring shit out at the same time. And, you know, like blah, 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 blah. Like I don't think that's objectively cooler. I think that's subjectively so much more me and like what I'm about. And that makes me so much more happier, you know? Also like, yeah. It's not even like a success and money or like authenticity and happiness. I think it's like both. Like I truly think I'm going to be so much more successful, quote unquote, and wealthier because I doubled down into something that was more me, just where the world is going. Yeah.
You ready to talk about banking?
Let's do it, buddy.
We gotta do it. I love
it. I love talking about banking. I just forget because I've thought about it so much.
Yeah.
Like it's not novel to me. That doesn't mean it's not novel to a lot of people, and that I can like spread some insight, you know.
Well, let's since we're on the topic of banking, let's just take it way back to the college years. Why did you go into banking in the first place? What was your driving force to go into the great world of Wall Street?
Dude, well, there's like a few ways that I tell this, but so I went to NYU Stern, and NYU Stern is pretty much finance, and more specifically like a bank feeder. We do place into like some marketing and some like prestige marketing, some prestige, like we place in the big four. We're less represented in like big three consulting. But like people go, like a bunch of people go to like Accenture and like similar places like that. But like it's a finance centric school. And again, like I was through college, through like K through college, like my programming and my training was enter new community, figure out the most competitive, sought after, ambitious value hierarchy, and try to climb it. So like in high school, that manifested as like me like trying to be school president and like getting school president, or like me like doing the school musical, or me like joining this club, or whatever. That's how it manifested. And like me trying to get the best grades, like that's how it manifests. In college, it was like me joining the like exclusive business frat, me like, you know, doing this like kind of popular acapella group on campus, me trying to get into banking because it was a shiny, cool thing that everyone in it thought was cool, and everyone outside of it had mixed opinions of it, but still gave like notoriety cred to. Yeah. Right. So it's like, it's the same thing. It's like, what thing will make my parents proud / like in like a Asian parents kind of way? What thing will like put my parents at ease? Let's put it that way. And also help me like talk to pretty girls, and also like set up my life in like a secure way, right? Like tied in a bow, like subconsciously, that's why I was drawn to it. And also like, it's one of those things where like, so it's like, if you have like 20 roads in front of you, and one road is like really steep and really congested, but it's really well paved and it's well lit. And someone hands you the keys to a Tesla and say, if you go down this road, you can drive this Tesla for free, right? As a kid, it's like, now I know to ask, okay, like, where's that road going? But like, as a kid, it's like, yeah, sign me up. This road looks great. Yeah. You know, it's like, I didn't do the reverse engineering to be like, you know, who am I? What do I want to do? It was like, no, like I'm anxious because everyone else seems to be like sprinting up a road. I don't have time to think about what road to go down. I'm anxious and I need to start sprinting too. And like, this seems like the road that gives me the most optionality. So like, yeah, like let me do it. And like, I don't regret it. I think like all in all, I still like, especially then and even now, I think it's like one of the best things you can do out of college. It's just like there's definitely exceptions of like people who shouldn't do it. But like, I'm glad I did it. I think the exceptions would be if you specifically know or have an itch that like your calling is something else. Yeah. Then I would then say like you are better off doing that for a year or two, and like you'll be much further along in like life journey, like meta learning yourself, than having done banking. Mm-hmm. Now, like this is agnostic of like your financial situation. Like if you need to make your parents good, if you need to make yourself good, maybe it's still you forego that calling and you go into banking. But like, yeah, agnostic of that, like that's the only thing I would say. Like if you like kind of know that you want to be like, I don't know, like a founder or a content creator, or those are the only things that
you're talented in something, and then you always liked it.
You have an inkling that like it might be a thing. I think like
money aside, you know, you put money aside.
But if you're like generally multi-talented, or if you're generally like ambitious and like you cared about getting good grades, and like you generally were good at figuring systems out and climbing up hierarchies, I think banking and consulting are still very solid options because they let you, they give you like great like base layer skill sets and stamina, and like work, like understanding of like how to do good work fast and like drive results. That makes you more of like a elite soldier when you're like in these other corporations. But you do need to weigh that with like, it does put people in a cookie cutter way of thinking. So like there's a lot of stuff that I'm still unlearning, both in terms of work process and like in terms of like
100%
that I was telling you
100%.
about. I hit on a lot of stuff there that I can double click on, but so all in all, I went into banking because I was a kid and like it was the thing that everyone was doing. Everyone that I looked up to was doing it. And I'll frame it a different way. So let's say I'm doing like very general market research, right? Like I would pull, like, what do? You pull a random assortment of people across ages, across gender, race, creed, whatever, across socioeconomic lines, whatever, right? But the thing is, like, when you're a student, you don't do that with like people in banking. Like you don't go and like network with someone that did banking and left, someone that did banking for 5 years, someone that did banking for 20 years and loves it, someone that did did banking for a year, left, and then hated everything else and came back, like someone that went to consulting and went into banking. Like you don't do that. What do? You network 90% with either people that just got into banking and have an active incentive to make it sound good so that they
feel good about themselves.
Yeah, they feel good about the decision that they made, or because like they're not going to shit talk their own bank when like they need to recruit you in the next year to like give you their first year analyst work, right? Or like people, or you basically people a year or two into it, right? That like don't really have the hindsight to like really talk about it.
Or a car students, seniors who did internship and they're like, this is the best
that
thing
didn't even
ever.
start yet. I
think that's like majority of people that you network with, people who've done internships.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, like, there's like this little echo chamber bubble. And like, that's why I was really passionate about creating content, because that's the bubble that I wanted to pop of like, I'm not about this grind of like, oh, expose Wall Street, it's evil and like toxic, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, there's just information asymmetry. There's good and bad. Like some of the best things that I know how to do, some of the best people I know, some of the best lessons I've learned, like some of the best productive weeks of like working, like I would like some of those weeks of working like 120 hours I would do again because I learned so fucking much, or it was so satisfying. For example, like I truly believe in information asymmetry being inefficient for all parties involved. That's why I was that's what like I'm super passionate about making content about it. But yeah, that's partially why I went into banking too. Information asymmetry. I was actively back solving into drinking the Kool-Aid so that I can work harder to get into investment banking versus starting from patient zero, starting from me and then seeing what is the better fit for me. I'll give you one more framing of this. This is like shit I'm super passionate about.
No, I mean, this is important. Like before you continue, I think this is actually a topic that needs to be talked about more for college students who want to go into banking, because the idea is that like, for two reasons. Number one, unless your goal is clear, it's hard to motivate yourself, especially if you go to non-target school, to go through that grueling process of breaking this industry that you don't even know you want to do. Number two, it's just like, once you get in, it's like, what's going to get you through it, right? Why did you do it in the first place? So it's a good idea to know why people who, for example, for you, went into it and why you quit. And what was the motivation of what we're about to talk about, that, like, motivation of getting in and how that changed and why you left afterwards. I think this is very important to frame this.
Yeah, actually, let me just skip my heady stuff and like we can just continue down my resume. Why I left banking, I would say, I think a big thing is like this took me by surprise when I started making content, that it's not common knowledge that like 90% of fucking analysts leave. I mean, like a good portion leave to buy side, which I do think people know, but like even going into banking, like a lot of people understand that like it's a stepping stone, you like, because you can lateral into roles that are like somewhat elite entry level, or like maybe skip a rung or two past entry level when you go from banking to corporate. And then if you go buy side, obviously that's a different track, and like it's different like income, risk, benefit kind of profile. But yeah, so it's not like I toiled with the decision to like stay in banking or not. Like it was never. I didn't go into banking ever thinking like, oh, I want to be an MD. Really, it was more like, do I want to do buy side or do I want to do something else? It's kind of like, I think the question that most people that actually do go into banking ponder. From the student perspective, I can understand, because like banking seems like this like big like desirable thing. Like, why would people leave? I think, when you're early on in like the learning cycle, like I can kind of understand that question. But why not PE? I mean, I saw it, and I think when I was doing banking, I had to really stretch and clench to be like a really good banker. And I was like I was top bucket. Like I worked really hard. I like, I was a soldier. I like jumped on the grenade. I ate the shit. Like I did a lot of hard work. But I realized, like, when I looked around, there were like my MD, I was really fortunate, was like, he was such a good MD in like so many ways. Like this man was like, I don't know, this is the kind of guy, like, I don't know what he would do if he wasn't a banker, like
I met guys like that.
Yeah, like being a banker energized the fuck out of him. Like he loved competing for deals. He loved like closing.
He lived for the game.
Yeah, he lived for the game. And like that was so inspiring to me. And I like watching that made me realize, like, not a million years would I feel that way about this.
Yeah.
And that was very enlightening for me. And so I'm grateful that I had front row seats to seeing him like execute that passionately. And it's like, and it's one thing to like, not everyone has to feel that passionate about what they do. I realized I was someone that wanted to feel that way about what I do. Right. So it's like, that's like self-discovery that you need to do. And then once that clicked, and then I talked to like 3 headhunters, like for buy side stuff. And then I realized, like, this ain't it either. Like I can do the thing again. Like the meta strategy of a lot of ambitious students is, let me understand the most desirable ladder to climb. Let me chug the Kool-Aid around this ladder so that I can work really hard at it. But the thing is, like, the Kool-Aid starts to lose its efficacy after, like, as you get older.
It's a little sour towards the end. It's not sweet anymore,
Yeah. And in high school, American high schools are, it's cake compared to like anything abroad. Like you can muscle your way through chugging Kool-Aid through high schools, and like if you really care, like you can be top. In my opinion, you can be like top percent. Like assuming you're in like a well-to-do neighborhood and your family situation's good, your financial situation's good, etc. In college or in banking, that's not the case, because like if you put your foot to the metal, like you don't get to go home at like 3 p.m. and like do your homework. Like they just give you more work at the end of it, right? Like so you burn out. You can burn out when you're
like, the more you work, the more work you get.
You're right. So what was I saying? Fuck. What was I talking
so
about?
like you didn't want to go into PE. What are choices were you contemplating before you ultimately decide that, like, I want to do something else?
Yeah, so I think I was also lucky to have a mentor, friend-tor, I call it, that went from Rothschild to Netflix for their content planning and analysis role. They call it like content strategy analysis or something. And that was when like streaming was fucking cool. That was when like streamers like were disrupting a lot, like House of Cards and like Orange is the New Black was coming out. Like that's when streaming was fucking sexy.
Yeah, that's when Ninja was peaking. 2018, 2019.
Yeah. I was kind of like blind to that side of like
Twitch
and like social at that time, but like yes. So once that happened, like I also like minored in like entertainment business and like film and TV production, like kind of accidentally. I just like love these classes, and then I was like junior year, I was like, oh, I'm like 70% through both of these. Like, let me just get it. Him like making that move. So he was a senior when I was a freshman. So he made that move as I was recruiting into banking, right? So because he was 2 years out of banking and I was like a junior. Yeah, that makes sense. Once that clicked, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of my things that I like put on my like consider route. So I would say like junior year, like I kind of like planted the seed in my head of like, I think I'm going to go to LA and work for Hulu, Netflix, or Amazon.
So you knew this like you're in college already.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's early on.
Yeah. I've learned to trust my gut a lot more because of things like this. And I think I developed like my gut kind of earlier on because I like being an immigrant kid, you kind of needed to. And then I also moved schools like from middle school to high school. So like when you're like zapped from one set of culture community things to another, like for me, I realized like in hindsight, like I became very distrusting of like, not distrusting, but like I'm just very skeptical about like dogma and like isms and like reasoning by analogy. Like people call it different things, but like when like a community tries to just give me a value set or give me a right way to live your life, I'm like, no, like I've lived in Korea. Like we take our shoes off. Like we enjoy the smelly food. Like I don't like, I'm going to pick and choose and I'm going to rebuild all the assumptions that you're trying to give me. Right. So I think I developed that a little bit earlier on. So when I saw him do that, that kind of muscle snapped in. When I saw him go to Netflix, that kind of muscle snapped in. And I was like, oh, this seems like a way to get into entertainment and media without like foregoing the work of coming to Stern and going into banking. Like it's also like kind of sexy and prestigious. It's not really like clear what it is yet, but it seems like I can go there and not forego this like academic and professional prestige / like achievement that I've like gotten through banking. So that was what was really appealing to me. Now, obviously, once you get there, everything has its like pros and cons. Excuse me, but that was my rationale. I mean, like in my gut, now that I'm like actually creating TikTok content, a lot of I would say 80% of the people. This is a made up number, but I would say like 80% of the people in and around the entertainment industry that are like network execs and stuff are people that just want to do it / be around it in general. And they like, but like needed the security of like a corporate job, or just like were emotionally too risk averse to like ever like go that route, you know? Maybe 80s too aggressive. There are people that just know that they're not meant to be like actors or directors and like know that their skill set is more like analytical, but I think there's a lot of closeted creative people in executive jobs around like sports, media, entertainment. The reason that I'm so passionate about like the new era of creator economy is because TikTok changed the game, where the cost of production and distribution is so low that like practitioners can make content. You know, like you can have 1 million followers without having to be your full-time job. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah.
Going off on another tangent there, but yeah.
No, that's awesome. So like, I guess like overall, and you can take this question however you want to take it. Did you enjoy your time more in investment banking or working still within like the finance world in Hollywood?
Ooh, great question. I've never thought of it that way. Wow. I mean, yes and no, right? I would say the things that I was working on, very much more Hulu. But I would say like in banking, like the culture and the people and the day-to-day was much more me. Like I like in terms of camaraderie, in terms of like shared values, in terms of like even like sense of humor, like you know, the like I self-selected hard into that environment, you know. Like it was other like the people at banks who are there, they're like generally they're people, I would say 80% of entry-level bankers are people that are trying to socioeconomically migrate upwards from like upper blue collar to like white collar to like you know lower middle to like upper middle, like a lot of immigrants or children of immigrants or like white people also trying to do that migration. So there's like a lot of shared values there, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of shared like grit and ambition and also like the culture of like Wall Street that I missed at Hulu and like I would say like there are dumb people everywhere, there are assholes everywhere. It just kind of the flavor of dumb and asshole is different. And like the competence is like variable everywhere, whether it's Hollywood or Wall Street. But Wall Street generally like, and like this is Wall Street generally, people there tend to push towards a result as generally as hard as they can. Not like literally like some people kill themselves over it. Like some people like bend over backwards for it, but like if something can be done more effectively or efficiently, people on Wall Street tend to push to get there. Which culturally makes sense. And also in terms of industry, it makes sense because, you know, if you shave like 5 hours a week off a week, then that might be one more pitch per month. Maybe that's like 3 to 5 more pitches per quarter. That might mean that you have one more deal that you get in a year, which means $20 more million of revenue for a year. So that makes sense. In Hollywood, I make a process more efficient. I like stay like 5 hours late to like make a process more efficient. Like that doesn't really move the needle. It's a private market. Content is a private market with like very finite number of buyers and sellers. Things like obviously are going to move slower. And like we're talking like you know, bank, like at a bank, you're buying and selling like enterprise assets that are 50 to 500 million to multi-billion, right? Content assets are like, you know, like 6 figures, sometimes like 6 to 7 figures.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, you know, like a library show that like you like forgot about, like you like I bartered in that. Like I was valuing content for like little like everything from The Office to like Saved by the Bell, you know, like these are smaller dollars. So like it's less urgent. It's much more about relationship management. It's much more about like there are like the analytical rigor is important. It's just less important relatively compared to like what it was in like banking, for example. So like that was like the biggest culture shock for me. Like people like to talk about the Emmys more than they like to talk about Tesla stock in Hollywood. Like I can calibrate to that. People like to go to the beach and like have a relaxed life compared to like people like to go to the Hamptons and the clubs and like work on the weekends. Like I can calibrate to that. But like for me, like knowing that you can make a process more efficient and effective, but like leaving it was like deeply troubling and unsatisfying for me. And at first I thought that was a sign of incompetence, which was a mistake. It's a sign of like, the industrial system being like a completely different incentive system, you know? Yeah. So to answer to reiterate my answer to your question, I think the ethos and like who my people are, you know, like I think I am more aligned to the people that I was working with in banking, but like it was too much so that like I overworked and I like burned myself out and I wasn't investing in other parts of my life, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, it wasn't my calling. Whereas Hulu, much more closer to my interest and calling, deeply satisfying in like the topics and the space and the stuff that I was working on and trying to improve. In terms of the ethos and the people, like I loved the people that I worked with, but like I wouldn't say they're like my people. Like I wouldn't like, you know, like they're not going to invite me to their wedding or something, you know?
Yeah. No, I think like a lot of times this is why people always talk about investment banking afterwards. You go into different industries and stuff. Like people like hiring bankers because they come from this environment in which they're so used to grinding out. And even though like let's just say that's not who you are, you like be a more chill person, you come in with that mindset to a new job, and then you still want to get that output because that's what your mind is so used to find satisfaction in, of like input, output. And then if your new job kind of has a different structure, doesn't necessarily give you that, it feels weird. it feels weird to you because just like I'm not being productive, and we love being productive, right? We love getting a feeling of getting that sign off, right, closing that deal or such of that sort. So I think that's like a great point. But yeah, I mean, other than that, what do you have planned for the rest of the year? What's kind of the big plans for Mr. Lifestyle Banker in 2022 before we close this out?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. We got to do this again, and like maybe 100%. I'll be a little bit more structured in my thinking and like what we talk about. Thanks for letting me like kind of stream of consciousness meander this episode. But what do I have planned? Well, we didn't hit on it. We'll hit on it next time. I started a new job that I'm really just focused on like ramping up on and like building a good, solid, like, I don't know, routine with, and also just like build my credibility, build my like, get my like professional side back up, like, because I'm definitely a little bit rusty right now. And then as that kind of like gets into more of like maintenance mode versus like build mode, then I'm looking to like get back into content much more heavily, and then also think about like moving, because I'm not going to live in my parents' house for too much of this year.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. As we end this, I'm going to ask you one question that I was asked once, and I thought this was a great question just to end the call with. Okay. What would you give, I guess, like what advice would you give your 18-year-old self if you were to, for some reason, time travel today and that advice won't kill the world or something?
Yeah. What advice would I give to my 18-year-old self? So if I'm 18, I'm about to enter college.
You're about to go to NYU Stern. What would you tell that guy? That's a good one,
It's good. I would say like.
How old are you today, by the way?
I'm 28, so that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, a decade ago.
Yeah. Wow, I'm finally not shocked when I say my age. It took a while.
I'm getting pretty shocked when I tell people my age. Tell them like,
fuck. How old are you? 26?
I'm 26. I'm like, God damn it,
yeah,
getting old.
You're not that old, dude. You're not that old.
I'm not, but it's getting there.
You're back half. You're back half, but it's a good half, dude. Advice I'd give to my 18-year-old self, I would say like, how do I make this succinct? I want to give you a good soundbite, but I like the advice that I would give to my 18-year-old self is like, you can brand yourself in the name of identity, but don't put yourself in a box of what you can and can't do. So to say it another way, like it can be helpful to brand yourself as like the finance guy or the creative guy or the founder guy or this guy or that girl. That can be helpful in terms of like marketing yourself and branding yourself and networking, but like don't fall for your own bullshit. Like you can be in finance and create music. You can be in the arts program and start trading crypto. Trust me, the people that are doing it, especially at 18, the other people that are doing it don't know jack shit compared to what you can actually learn within like a month of reading or watching YouTube videos or TikToks at this point. So I really think that like I was scared because I went to NYU and I was in the business school. I was scared to be surrounded by all of these 18 to 20-year-olds that like auditioned into the Tisch School of Drama, and the Tisch Film and Production School, to like explore that side of myself. Like if I could talk to my 18-year-old self, I would tell him like, dude, like dive in, pick up a camera, start making stuff now. Like, because it took me 10 years to finally make a YouTube video. I've wanted to make a YouTube video since I was like 16.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah. Don't restrict yourself to what you branded yourself as. But at the same time, it is smart to have a branding for yourself. It gives you direction to go in, but don't just be like, I am this guy because of that reason. I can't be this because I am this.
Yeah. Use it. Don't let it constrict you.
Control you. Yeah. That was great. Well, Peter, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the first episode podcast or first ever episode of the MengMengDuck Podcast.
Love it, bro.
Other than that, we'll speak again very soon. Have a
Yeah,
good
thanks
day.
for having me. Have a good one, everyone.
All right. Bye.